All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Placerville City Council. If everybody will please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's meeting. Apologize for the delay. Our closed session ran just a little bit longer, so we will go ahead and jump right into everything. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clarici will be noted as absent, as well as Councilmember Yarbrough. Councilmember Gottberg?
Here.
Vice Mayor No?
Here.
Mayor Saragosa?
Here.
Thank you.
Yes, and our two colleagues are out today and hopefully having a good time on vacation. So we wish them well. All right, so we'll go ahead and move to item 3, which is our ceremonial matters, and item 3.1, which is a proclamation of the Placerville City Council recognizing the month of October 2023 as All Colors, All Cancers Awareness Month. So I will go ahead and read this proclamation into the record. So again, a proclamation of the Placerville City Council recognizing the month of October 2023 as All Colors, All Cancers Awareness Month. Whereas, according to the American Cancer Society, cancer mortality rates continue to decline. However, future progress may be attenuated by rising incidences for breast, prostate, and uterine corpus cancers, which also happen to have the largest racial disparities in mortality. And whereas in 2023, over 1.9 million new cancer cases and over 600,000 cancer deaths are projected to occur in the United States. And whereas Images of Hope El Dorado has hosted the Pink in the Night awareness campaign throughout the month of October in conjunction with National Breast Cancer Awareness Month since 2013. And whereas Images of Hope's mission is to create opportunities where cancer patients, their family members, teachers, and community can come participate in all aspects of the arts and foster an environment where creativity can flourish and serves all El Dorado County community members touched by cancer and other traumas. And whereas Images of Hope has launched the All Colors, All Cancers campaign to raise awareness of all types of cancers, early screenings, and healing arts and movement therapy, and to all those touched by cancer. And whereas in 2020, Images of Hope commissioned an art installation to raise awareness of all cancers. And whereas the art installation, a large depiction of an awareness ribbon in all colors, has been temporarily installed at the Bell Tower on Main Street throughout the months of October in 2020, 2021, 2022, and will be installed again in 2023. And whereas the City of Placerville joins communities across our nation to increase the awareness about the importance for everyone to make an informed decision with their healthcare provider about early detection and testing for all types of cancer. Now, therefore, be it resolved, I, Michael Saragosa, Mayor of the City of Placerville, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2023 as All Colors, All Cancers Awareness Month in the City of Placerville, and I commend this observance to all citizens. Thank you. And I believe Wendy is here this evening as well. Wendy, if you want to come on up, do you want to make any, if you'd like to say a few words, or if you don't have to, or you can just present to you. Yeah, if you like to. Okay. I'll come on up. I'll come on over and then.
Yeah, I just really want to thank the City Council and everybody that's here for giving us the opportunity to be able to do this. So, the reason we made it All Colors, All Cancers is we really felt like this is an opportunity for everybody. Breast Cancer Awareness Month is such a big deal around the country, but it also is an opportunity for us as a community to remind people that to have screenings for all cancers. It's really important. Like the proclamation says, the numbers speak for themselves. And I think it's really important to be able to take this opportunity for everyone. The women tend to be the ones in the families that encourage other people to get, whether it's their colon screenings, prostate screenings, any of the other kind of screenings that can really help prevent cancer moving from early stage to late stage. And we've all seen enough of that in our lives. I'm sure all of us here have been touched by cancer in some form, whether it's a family member or a friend. But I just really want to thank everybody for supporting us again and for the month of October. And I also want to thank Terry Zeller for letting us light the bell tower up pink again. And so I hope you guys enjoy all the pink lights downtown and get an opportunity to see it. We've spread out to El Dorado, Diamond Springs, wineries, if you get a chance to go there. We have a lot of pink lights at the wineries, but it's just a way for us to give back to the community because we get so much. So thank you very much. A picture, okay. You tell I'm not really good at this. Thank you.
Again, thank you, Wendy, for being here this evening. And again, everybody, get those screenings done. Any other comments, colleagues? Any other public comments on this on item 3.1? All right, seeing none. Again, Wendy, we'll look forward to the lights going up and the symbols. So thank you. Okay, we'll move ahead to item 4, which is our closed session report. City Manager Morris, we have a readout for this evening.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We had 2 items on closed session, and the council gave staff direction on both of those items, and no formal action was taken.
All right, thank you very much. Any public comments on item 4? All right, seeing none, we'll move to item 5, which is the adoption of the agenda.
I'll move to adopt.
A second.
All right, we have a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Gottberg?
Aye.
Vice Mayor No?
Aye.
Mayor Saragosa?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll move to item 6, which are announcements and presentations to the public, and item 6.1, which are brief comments by the City Council. And I'll start with Councilmember Gottberg.
I attended Girls' Night Out and had a great time. I think it's a wonderful event that we have here on Main Street.
Great, thank you. Vice Mayor.
I attended the Sierra School 3rd grade government presentation, education, what we'll call that. It was fun, where 3rd graders get to ask you all sorts of questions. And I went to the block party, another good event on Main Street, and I did a drive-by of Girls' Night Out, which looked like a lot of people were having fun. Thanks.
All right, and no comments for me this evening. I'm glad we had participation at both of those. I apologize for not making it to the walk. Ended up being out of town, but it's always a fun event. So thank you, Vice Mayor, Chief, and City Manager for attending and answering all the questions because they have great questions. So it would have been fun to do.
Burning question. How old are you?
Next question. That would be like.
And then I answered, and I heard the little girl say, "Dad, she's older than you."
Out of the mouth of babes. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to item 6.2, which is to consider acknowledge and filing of the annual financial report and independent auditors reports and single audit and independent auditors report for fiscal year 2021-2022. And Mr. Warren has this item for us.
Good evening, Mayor Saragosa and members of the council. So tonight we have Ken Poon, CPA, managing partner and CEO of the Poon Group, to present the financial statements. With that, I'll hand it over to Ken.
Thank you, Dave. Good evening, Mayor, member of the City Council. Good evening. My name is Ken Poon. I'm the managing partner of the firm and also the technical partner on servicing on the City of Placerville financial statement audit for the fiscal year end June 30, 2022. We are not done with the 23, but it's coming along. So if I can have the presentation. So what I'm going to do is actually give you a 30,000-foot level of the report instead of reading about like a 130-page, 140-page long report. Going through our scope of work that the city has engaged us to perform. In accordance with the AUC sections, communication with those charged with governance, which is one of the professional standards that we have to follow, there are certain required communications, and I'm going to bring that up to you tonight. Give you an overview of the financial statement, also pulling out some key financial indicator, pension and OPEB information, and then also last but not least is to deliver our audit results to you and give you a chance to ask any questions you may have in the report, and then we'll wrap up the presentation. So the scope of work, actually break it down into three parts. The first part is actually the main part of the audit, which is the financial statement, which include the annual financial report that's covered the period from July 1st, 2021 to June 30, 2022. Since the city has expended more than $750,000 in federal expenditure, you are also required to perform a compliance audit, which we call it as a single audit. And then last but not least is to recalculate and agree upon procedures to recalculate your appropriation limit that was being adopted by the council. So certain required communications under the professional standard. First thing I would like to spell out the responsibility by both parties. As mentioned yourself, you are fully responsible for these financial statements by presenting these financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principle. The Governmental Accounting Standard Board is the standard setting bodies for state local government. So therefore, you abide by those accounting policy. You also need to adopt sound accounting policy. Very importantly, that you need to establish and maintain proper internal control over both financial reporting and compliance, provide evidence supporting to the amount and the disclosure stated in the financial statement. Also, fair presentation of these financial statements that are free from material misstatement, whether due from fraud or errors. And last but not least, you do need to have programs to prevent and detect fraud. Our responsibility as your auditor, since we are engaging the to perform the audit, we abide by the two auditing standards. One is the generally accepted auditing standard under the AICPA rule, and then also because the city has expended more than $750,000 in federal expenditure, we are also required to perform the audit in accordance with government auditing standard. We're also required to communicate with those charged with governance, and we deem the city council to be under the definition of those charged with governance. We also are required to assess the risk of material misstatement. We assess the audit risk of internal control over financial reporting, determine the fair presentation of the financial statement, and render our audit opinion. In case that we identify any material weaknesses or significant deficiency in internal control, we also issue a recommendation letter to the City Council. Okay. Then I'm going through the a little longer list. First thing first is about our independence. We are independent of the city. We comply with all relevant ethical standards in accordance with both AICPA standard and the government auditing standard in terms of independence. The city also disclosed a summary of the accounting policy that was being adopted by the city in Note 1 to the financial statement, and also very importantly, the city implement GASB statement number 87, leases, which is changing the way of accounting for leases in your financial statement. However, you do not have any material transactions regarding leases during this year. The U.S. GAAP, the generally accepted accounting principle, require the management to use estimate in these financial statements. There are a couple significant estimates, which include the fair value of the investment, the depreciation on capital asset, and the two significant estimate that's deemed really significant in these financial statements, which is the net pension liabilities and the total OPEB liabilities, also included in the significant estimate category. As I pointed out, there are a lot of footnote disclosure, but I would like to point it out that there are certain sensitive disclosure that I highly recommend you to read through it, including Note 1 of the financial statement, which is the summary of the significant accounting policy. Note 7 and Note 8, because of the estimate being used, the assumption being made by the actuary on both the pension and OPEB liability. So Note 7 and Note 8 seems to be a very long note, but it's actually give you a lot of information about these two estimate. Note 12 is about the contingency. And then footnote 13 has been there for quite some time. It's about the city has a limited obligation bond that was being defaulted. And then also note 15, we pointed out there's a bridge loan agreement that was being signed by the city as a subsequent event, which is signed after June 30, 2022, but before our issuance of our financial report. There were no corrected or uncorrected misstatement, which kudos to your team, because your teams actually prepare these financial statement, and we did not identify any material misstatement in these financials. Once in a while, the city may consult with another CPA or consultant in terms of accounting treatment. To the best of our knowledge, and management inform us there's no such consultation. We encountered no significant difficulties in dealing with management, and also we do not have any disagreement with management in terms of accounting treatment or any audit procedures that we performed. So now it's getting into the numbers. So the first set of the numbers is actually what I call the consolidated level, the government-wide financial statement. The government-wide financial statement is broken down into two sets. One is the governmental activities. So the first slide here show it to you the condensed level of the balance sheet as of June 30, 2022 compared to 2021. So at the end of June 30, 2022, the city ended with $59.3 million of net position, of which $62.4 million is deemed to be net investment in capital asset, which is non-liquidable asset. The restricted net position is $13.2 million, which is restricted by third party or enabling legislation, and resulting in unrestricted deficit of about like $16.3 million. Compared to last year of 57.3, there's an increase of net position by $2 million. There's a surplus for this year. So looking at the surplus, the $2 million, total program revenue, $4.8 million, of which $2 million is you charge the user for fee, operating grants and contribution, and the capital grant and contribution totaling about like $2.8 million. So netted out of the expense of $17 million, so the net cost of service to be at $12 million, which is subsidizing by your general revenue, which is mainly the tax revenue and investment earnings. So during the current fiscal year, you have about like $14.3 million. And then also you do receive a $36,000 coming from the business type activities. So therefore, this is your $2 million surplus for the under the full accrual basis in your governmental activities. Compared to last year, you only have you do have about like 11 million. The big difference is there's a one-time capital contribution last year. Therefore, it makes up the big difference.
If I may, real quick, that big difference was the Western Placerville Interchange Phase 2 project, which was, I think, around 11 million total. But in that year, it was a significant, you had that surge, and then we finished the project, and it's no longer.
Thank you, Dave. And then the next set of financial statement is full accrual basis under the business type activities, which include your water, your sewer, and your Measure H fund. So at the end of the day, June 30, 2022, you ended with about like a $23 million in total net position, of which almost like $20 million net investment in capital asset, $2.2 million as restricted by third party, and then unrestricted to be coming close to $1 million. And then when you compare last year, there's about like almost like a $930,000 increase from last year. So when you look at the The income statement for the year, so charges for service, $9.5 million. Capital grant, it's about like 154,000. So total program revenue was about like $9.6 million. Total expenses, $10.3 million. 700, resulting a net cost of service of 730,000. The general revenue was about like $1.7 million, and then you transfer out to the governmental activities about like 36,000. So that is your net increase in your net position, which is another a word I use is the surplus for the year, 923,000. Okay. So general fund is the main operating fund of the city. So therefore, we pull it out for information. So at the end of June 30, 2022, the city ended with $4.4 million of total fund balance, ending fund balance for your general fund. Compared to last year, $2.7 million, there's an increase of $1.7 million operating surplus for the general fund. So looking at the information, $11 million for the revenue, total expenditure $9.2 million, and then there are some other financing sources and uses, which is your transfer, 97,000. So there is your $1.7 million increase in your general fund. Some financial key indicator. So one of the things that we always look at as to show that you have a strong financial position is compare the net cost of service to the tax revenue in the under the governmental activities. So total expenses, $17 million, net program revenue of close to $4.9 million. Your net cost of service was $12.2 million. The tax revenue is about like $14 million, which is coming out to a ratio of 87%, which is really great because you don't want this percentage to be above 100% because all the service are really covered by your current revenue. But when you look at 2021, you see a significant difference. It's because of the one-time revenue, the capital contribution in last year, about like $7.2 million. So therefore, the ratio has been like a little out of range. But when you actually take out the $7.2 million and compare it, the ratio should be approximately the same. The other items that I always look at is what I call the rainy days fund reserve. So at the end of the day, you do have a available fund balance in your general fund of about like $2.5 million. Annual expenditure is about like $9.2 million. So you do have about like a 27.31%. Compared to last year, you only have like 23.18%. So your reserve fund level, it's really improving. You do have about like a 3 months of annual expenditure. GFOA, which is the Government Finance Officer Association, highly recommend that you, at the minimum, you do need to have a 2-month reserve, but now you have 3 months based on the calculation. So the next item here is talking about net pension liabilities. So at the end of June 30, 2022, using a 2021 measurement date, the city is reporting about like a $15 million in net pension liabilities. As you can tell, the funded ratio is about like 72 for miscellaneous plan and then almost like 80% for safety plan. But keep that in mind, this funding ratio is really based out of the actuarial study came out 2 years ago when they did the valuation back in 2020 and roll forward to 2021. And during that time of the year, the CalPERS do have a really great return on investment. Therefore, it's kind of pushing up the funding ratio. But in the future, we are cautious that this funding ratio will be dropping back to maybe low 70 or maybe in the 60% level because of the investment earning is not that great in the fiscal year June 30, 2022. So the net OPEB liability is your retiree health insurance. So the discount rate being used was 3.69% because the city did not set aside the an irrevocable trust to set aside money to pay for this liability. So therefore, we are using a lower discount rate. So at the end of the day, the liability was about like $3.9 million report on the face of your financial statement. Okay. So the audit results, we do issue an unmodified opinion for all opinions unit that we issue, which means that the financial statement are fairly presented in all material respect. Accounting policy have been consistently applied. Estimates are reasonable, and the disclosure are properly reflected in these financial statements. As let's say that in a couple of slides before, we do not have any disagreement with management. No material weaknesses identified in internal control over financial reporting. However, we do actually put in a finding called it significant deficiency in delay in financial reporting because the city should complete the financial statement prior, like within 9 months after the year end, but we issued the report sometimes in July this year, so it's about like almost like a year. So no accounting issue and no inappropriate activities were noted. And that concludes one more thing is the single audit, the compliance audit. So the city has expended about like $1.3 million in total federal expenditure. Major program is the Corona Relief Act Fund, so of total about like $577,000. So we tested about like 42%. So we did not identify any material weaknesses or significant deficiency. The city in all comply with all the regulations, terms and conditions with all the grantor agency. So therefore, we issue an unmodified opinion on your single audit also. So that's conclude my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Great. Thank you very much for walking us through a lot of information. So appreciate that. Do we have any questions at this point? All right, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for any public comments on this issue. Any public comments? All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the city council. So again, thank you. It's good to know that there's no deficiency. I know we had the delay, but no other deficiencies beyond that. I had to say one question. So in terms of the 3-month reserve, so we were a little bit below that before. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, because you were at 23.1, but still above the best practice by GFOA.
Okay.
Recommended by GFOA. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Mayor, if I may?
Yes.
Real quick, I just want to apologize for the single audit being late this year, and we're committed to getting the report done on time this coming year.
Gotcha. And that would be in March?
31st of 2024.
Gotcha. And we'll stay in that 27%. All right, sounds good. All right, thank you very much. We appreciate your time tonight. Thank you. All right, Dave, anything else you wanted to add here?
No, Ken covered it well, unless there's any questions. So.
All right. No, I think so. Good work. Thank you. All right. All right, then we will move to item 6.3, and that's to receive a presentation from El Dorado County Fire District regarding a proposed community facilities district for public safety services. And Chief Cordero has this for us. Oh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, Council. I'll give just a little bit of backstory to tonight's presentation before I turn it over to Kathy. And the fire districts have been looking into establishing a community facilities district for the last couple of years, been kind of on our docket. And as we've been working through the annexation process with Diamond Springs, they reached out to us a few months ago and said, hey, our consultant's going to be here if you want to have the opportunity to speak with them and get our program up and running. During that conversation, Kathy from Capital Finance Group noted that, well, absent of us having a CFD in place, that could be a negative impact on the annexation process with Diamond Springs. So as you can imagine, both elected officials from both fire districts kind of moved this up on the priority list for us. So we've been working diligently with Kathy. I would like to think we're a little bit ahead of schedule perhaps, but not wanting to negatively impact our timeline with the annexation process with Diamond Springs. So with that, I will turn it over to Kathy, and she can walk you through the presentation.
All right. Thank you. Good evening, Kathy.
Thanks, and thank you for having me here tonight. As Chief mentioned, we are just wanting to give you an update and provide you with information as the Fire District is considering the creation of a community facilities district for public safety services. And I won't go into a lot of detail, but if you have questions, I'm happy to answer, because I understand you're familiar with these CFDs, as the city has some in place. So I won't go into a lot of background on CFDs, just want to give you the high level. We had the pleasure of meeting with your staff ahead of time and felt like there were some key items that we wanted to update you on and get some input and feedback before the district made decisions moving forward. So as we mentioned, the fire district is considering doing a CFD for public safety services, and specifically would be looking at funding, of course, fire protection, suppression, prevention, kind of these ongoing operations. Thinking about how training could be involved, EMS services, maintenance of fire apparatus or stations. This is kind of a laundry list. The reality is, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes, this is an incremental funding source. This isn't something that we're considering that would immediately fund these things. This is something that we're thinking about to set the fire district up in the long term. And that's really what Diamond Springs put in place back in 2006. So that's the timing of Diamond Springs CFD, and the El Dorado County Fire District is looking at it moving forward today. That's something that a public safety services CFD could include, not just fire, but other public safety services, thinking police services as well. So as we're developing this, we want to keep that in mind. As you know, a CFD can be used as a way for new development to mitigate its impacts. Since you're so familiar, you probably also know there's a lot of flexibility in this. So I keep saying can be. This is the intent for this particular CFD. There may be other types out there in different communities that are handled either community-wide or for infrastructure or public facilities. That's not what we're talking about here for the fire district. We're talking about it as a way for new development only to fund its impacts on fire services. Thinking about the fire district's revenue sources, property taxes is the predominant funding source for the fire district. They don't have sales taxes or other use taxes that they can tap into. It's property taxes. And although new development occurs, it does increase the amount of property tax revenues they collect. It's not proportional to the amount of service that they need to provide because they get such a small share of the 1% general property taxes. So this is a way for new development to mitigate its impacts so that existing residents aren't bearing the burden and there's no degradation in service for existing residents. So that's the concept. And I just want to be clear, what they're considering is a special tax that would only apply to new development, meaning existing residents, existing buildings would not be taxed. This is something that would apply for new development moving forward. The district would then receive annual revenues incrementally as the new development occurs. So we saw that kind of laundry list of things you can fund. If there's one parcel, they're only getting, let's say it's $500. They only get $500. You're not going to fund a laundry list of services with $500 a year. This is an incremental revenue stream that will build up over time as development occurs within the fire district's boundaries. There's a lot of flexibilities in these CFDs, and the fire district is still working through what exactly it would look like. Flexible boundaries, flexible tax formula. It just has to be something that can be tracked from an independent source, and it can't be based on the value. It's a landowner vote when we're talking about it in this scenario, since we're estimating the development would have less than 12 registered voters. You have the ability to annex in future parcels. So you set the CFD boundaries based on development at one point in time, and you set boundaries where additional development could then be annexed in. So for example, if there's a development occurring within city limits, we would identify that one parcel as the initiation of the CFD, set the boundaries of the entire city limits or even your sphere of influence for the potential future annexation of properties within the CFD. And then as development occurs within that annexation area, they would then join into the CFD. That's the concept that we're looking at. The fire district can legally form and administer the CFD on their own. They don't need the city to participate in that process. But as partners in the development process, we would need to coordinate with the city on implementing the CFD as a condition of development and working with your staff to make sure administratively that this is something we could implement. So there is a partnership here, but this isn't something where your city council would be taking formal action. But again, we want to make sure that we're partners in the process and we're working together. So where the fire district is, and Chief mentioned this is kind of this important component in the annexation with Diamond Springs. They've had theirs in place since 2006, and as they move forward, as they are annexed into the El Dorado County Fire Protection District's boundaries, their existing buildings that are part of the CFD would continue. But because that agency no longer exists, they don't have the authority to impose a CFD on future development. So that is why we're looking at the El Dorado County Fire Protection District creating this mechanism so that that funding could continue into the future. And it would encompass the entire jurisdiction of the El Dorado County Fire Protection District. Some of that is the city of Placerville, some of that is unincorporated county. We're actually contemplating 2 CFDs, one for Placerville and one for the unincorporated area. So that's the current thinking. Again, nothing has been set in stone. The district board is currently considering local goals and policies. We had a workshop last week. They gave a lot of great input. We're working on developing those local goals and policies and targeting October for approval. That assumes everything goes smoothly. So that's just our where we are in the plan. Once the goals and policies are adopted, then we will look to identify that initial property for CFD formation, one in the city limits, one in the unincorporated area. Again, 2 different CFDs, they don't need to be on the same timeline, it can be completely different. And so that's the overall concept. I'm supposed to say questions and discussion right there. There we go. So with that, I just want to see if you have any questions, if there's any reaction that you have to this idea, and we want to take that back to the Fire District Board as we move forward.
Definitely, and thank you again for being here this evening and for providing the overview. Any questions? I have one. So the 2 CFDs, is it just strictly because of the timing of it to do 2 different ones?
And jurisdictionally, you're 2 different land use agencies going through 2 different approval processes, 2 different processes. I just think it makes it a little bit easier to administratively handle it. I'm not envisioning a significant discrepancy in the rates. In fact, they want to keep it consistent throughout the entire boundaries. But if you were going to do some type of police services with the Placerville one, that could end up being a little bit different rate. But from the fire services perspective, we want to keep everything balanced. We don't want there to be an imbalance between city limits and outside. You don't want people to just go right outside the boundaries to not have a fee.
Understood, and that makes sense, especially when you talk about the police department potentiality of that. So that would make sense to have those 2 separate CFDs. So yeah, thank you for that. I had one other question. So October, you're looking at October to actually start the CFD?
To start the formal process.
Start the formal process.
So as you probably are familiar, there's a series of
yeah.
resolutions.
Yep.
The first thing the fire district needs to do is set these goals and policies, and then we can develop the tax formula. We don't even have enough direction at this point to even give you the rates or anything along those lines. We are still developing the concepts.
Gotcha.
So we're pretty early on, but you're right, we actually are ahead of the game. We were thinking we need about 6 months on this.
Correct, and we are trying to mirror our process as closely as we can with what Diamond Springs already has in place, so that, again, down the road administratively, we don't have 2 totally separate programs in place, trying to keep it all standardized.
Gotcha. I know the question I was going to have, my last question, sorry. So when you do the 2 CFDs, so the old Diamond Springs one, so will that one cease to exist? You'll have to start a new one?
Properties that are in today will continue to be in as long as the LAFCO action keeps them part of it. And so we're working closely with LAFCO to make sure that they would be part of it. But then there's no more Diamond Springs, so there's no more authority to put a new parcel in. So that's really, you need to have an entity that has a legal authority to put a property into the CFD.
A successor agency?
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha, thank you. All right, any other comments or questions? All right, we're gonna go ahead and open it up for public comment. So we'll go ahead and open up item 6.2 for public comment.
One of the most important things that you ever have to do is handle the matter of taxation. We have the blessings of great first responders in this community. Their needs are important. My suggestion is that you need to look at potential unintended consequences for this. You're talking about putting a tax on new development. If I've heard you and the Board of Supervisors carefully for the last few years, you're talking about a tremendous need for increased housing in this area. And instead of talking about reducing rates, like let's say you have a parcel that would allow you to build a new house, but also to put on a duplex or a rental unit, wow, wouldn't that be great to have an incentive, like a reduction in the fees for that other property? You don't do that. You're talking about putting a tax on new development. It doesn't affect me. I don't have any new development that's planning. But it doesn't seem like it makes sense when you're trying to increase development, new housing, and you're going to make it more difficult. The costs are already great. Now, the brilliant thing about that is that if you did it for everybody, like was proposed a few years ago, so many cents per acre, you would get outraged because we're already paying up to the gills in this town. We pay enormous amounts of money for sewer rates, all kinds of utilities. I know people on Main Street have, in one case, 5 properties on one water meter. And they wanted to add meters for the other properties. But they found that the cost of doing that was $20,000 per meter. That's $80,000 or so. And that's true for all of the properties downtown because it was done in the days when there was plenty of water and it was cheap. I don't get involved in new development, but from those who do, they talk about the enormous costs in the county for building, for all kinds of fees. It just gets to be extraordinarily expensive, and you're talking about adding some more. So while you don't have any questions, I believe you need to have a lot of questions between now and October when it comes back, because this sounds like a very costly program, and it's taxation, which is one of the most important duties that elected representatives have. I just see real problems down the line when you're going to tell us that, and by the way, the county wants more building, not just to meet the mandates of the state, but they need more development, because they need more property for property taxes to increase the size of government. I don't know if you knew, but local government, city and county, used to be in the courthouse 100 years ago, and now the county is the single largest employer in the county. Government is getting bigger. So I'd ask you to look closely before this ever comes up again. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirk. Any other public comments? All right. Oh, yes.
Sue Radman, Placerville resident. I think Kirk makes some good points here. If we want to add, and we've got a couple of new developments on the books going on right now, and we got a big hotel that's supposed to be working, somebody's supposed to be working on that. And what happens when you add these taxes to it? Then do these developments go away? Do people just say, nah, it's just going to cost too much, I quit? So I think we need to be really careful. But on the other hand, we have to provide services for these new developments too. So somewhere there has to be a balance that we have to reach where, yes, if we can have new development, they also need fire, they also need ambulance service, they also need police services. So, and those all cost money. And on the idea that you need to pay your own costs, then new development does need to pay its costs, but we need to be very careful that we don't make it so high that people just give up, and then we end up with no new housing, which is the place we are right now, where we need more housing and we don't have it. And if we make it so expensive that people can't afford to do it, I mean, the cost to develop and build right now are amazing. It's come to the point where it is cheaper to buy something already built than to get the land and build your own. So that is a big stumbling block to anybody doing any development. So let's be very careful. We need to do something. Let's just be careful that we keep it in balance.
Thank you, Sue. Appreciate the comments. Any other comments? All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment. Chief, I don't know if you wanted to make any last comments, or
I think that the points that were brought up, those have been considered by our board, our elected officials, as well as our staff. And, you know, as Kathy mentioned in her presentation, Diamond Springs has had theirs in place since 2006. And other agencies are contemplating the same thing. We get down to Sacramento Valley, Roseville, Rockland, Lincoln, all those cities. Those are currently in place to help mitigate those costs. So while it is a concern, I think that having it balanced and reasonable is the approach our board's taken, but that's where we're at with it.
all right, thank you, Chief. And it is the comments are very well taken. You know, where finances are so incredibly difficult in the state of California. You know, I have a friend that she worked in the Department of Finance and then in the Senate Budget Committee, and she gives a presentation that goes essentially from 1978 to where we are today, and it goes for everywhere from Prop 13 through ERAF through Prop 98 and everything else that has been put into place, the triple flip that we've done. I mean, a lot of other things that we've done as a budget with the state of California that's affected local government, how we fund things, how we fund education, how we fund local government, and how we fund state government. And it's really a fascinating discussion that she puts forward, because it really shows you the incredibly complicated and really handcuffed way local governments, to a large extent, have the ability to fund the services that they need to provide for their residents. And so it's great. I may one day just ask her if she'll come do it to me, come bring it as a favor, because it really gives you a sense of how people get frustrated with, well, why isn't that pothole filled, or why are we paying more? We pay taxes on this already. Why don't we get what we need for it? And it really is over a 40-year period of major policy decisions of where we are today and why we have so many categorical fundings that are in place that make things very difficult, because a dollar isn't just a dollar. It's a dollar, but it's cut up in 15 different ways, and you can only use it in so many different designs. And so you have things like CFDs and other stuff that have come into fruition because of the incredible complexity of how we budget within the state. So not meant to say one thing one way or the other, but just as it isn't just like we have complete control over what we can do. We have to live within the confines of what those policies, both by politicians that have done things as well as residents, like things like Prop 98, revenue bonds, and Prop 13. So we all live with the good and bad of those decisions. So just my little soapbox for the evening. All right, so any other, yes.
Just quickly want to
Manager.
make one comment. It was kind of referred to. As you know, we have, I'll refer to 3 projects, housing projects currently. The Cottonwood 4 and 6 project that we approved the final map at our last meeting, I believe it was. And then 2 affordable housing projects. Those are already approved, and therefore this will not come into effect for those projects. So those will go forward without those. So I just want to make that clear.
Thank you, Cleve. It's a good point to make. I appreciate that. All right. Well, again, Chief Deputy, thank you very much for the presentations this evening. More to come. We'll see if we have any more questions as we go forward, but looking forward to the consolidation and moving forward with everything. So thank you. Okay. I lost my, okay, here we go. We're going to move on to the consent calendar, item 7. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion by roll call vote unless any member of the council wishes to remove an item for discussion. Does any council member have any item between 7.1 and 7.8 that they'd like to either have comments or consider removing?
I'd like to pull 7.8, make some suggestions.
Okay, great. So item 7.8, we will pull. Anything else? All right, I will go ahead and open up the consent calendar. We're going to pull 7.8, but I will open up the consent calendar for any public comments.
Sue Rodman, member of the Measure H, Measure L Committee, and I'd like to comment on 7.7 of getting those leaking manholes fixed. I think that's absolutely wonderful for us to do, and yay. Yay for our engineering department again.
Thank you, Sue. Any other comments on the consent calendar? Seeing none, I will bring the consent calendar back to City Council. We're going to pull 7.8. So do I have a motion on the rest of the items?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
All right, we have a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Gottberg,
Aye.
Vice Mayor No,
Aye.
Mayor Saragosa.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we'll bring that one item back on item 9, but now we'll go to item 8, which is our public comments on non-agendized items. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the council on any matter not on the agenda and that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. So we'll go to item 8.1, which is oral communications. So anyone wishing to address the council on a non-agendized item.
You know, I was at the county fair, and they had all kinds of goodies to provide. It came from the Council of Aging. This is show and tell. They gave me a nice water bottle, a whole bunch of other gifts, like, for example, a night light. That's good. Oh, and then there's another group that gave me, and this is also with local government, it's another calendar. This one's about dog training that helps to find narcotics. And then I got another one at the local market, and it was on nutrition. Oh, and then the local health department sent me 4 test kits for COVID, and that's on top of the 4 I had last year, so I hope I don't need, that's probably 8 times larger than I need. Well, all of this is wonderful because it's free, except I just got through paying thousands of dollars in property taxes for just the last quarter. It's not free. And I think that you really need to look closely at expenses, because what happens when your parents and your kids ask you for new things, you're going to have to say sometimes, we can't afford it, or put it off later. We need the consolidation. It's tremendously efficient. I agree. But there's other methods to look at for taxation, and it's something you need to explore. John DeAgostini was great in coming up with, what, $500,000 for a statue, a bronze statue outside, another $500,000 for a grant to get some special high-tech vehicle. There must be some other options out there, and it's something for you, I would suggest, to explore, to come up with those methods for funding this valuable process. But we need to cut the costs of government and make it more efficient. Again, what do you do in business? They have sales when they want to increase revenue at the end of the month or something like that. Why not have reduction in the cost of construction fees, all those fees that get added onto things? I think that would help promote increased housing revenue, housing stock. So that's just a suggestion to watch out for the cost of government. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirk.
I appreciate it.
All right, any other comments? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment. In item 8.2, written comments. Do we have any written communications?
No, Mr. Mayor.
All right, no written communications. Okay. So we'll go ahead and move to item 9, which is our items pulled from the consent calendar. And item 7.8. And item 7.8 is to consider renewal of a contract with Bold Communications Incorporated, Emily Eidelman, to continue to provide social media outreach services for the city of Placerville. And our city manager, Mr. Morris, has this report. I saw Emily just walk outside.
I know that she knew she was on consent. I don't know that she realized that hers was the item that was proposed. I've asked her to come back, so.
Yeah, Nick, go, or,
I sent her a message, asked her to come back, so hopefully she gets that. Anyway, sorry about that.
see, you know,
Yeah.
these aren't scripted meetings.
Mayor and Council, this item, as you know, for the past year now, we have been using Bold Communications to assist us with social media outreach to try to get more information out to our public, both about events, upcoming issues, meetings, et cetera. And we have reached the end of that contract. It actually ended September 1st, I think, but we've continued with that with the anticipation of moving forward. And so what you have tonight is basically to continue that agreement under the same cost that we have for the past year. There were some options you will see in the proposal, but it does not, we're not recommending those options. We're only recommending that we continue under the service that we have had for the past year. So we do have the contract, and the proposal is in here, and the resolution to approve and renew that for another year. It was budgeted in your budget this year, and so it does not affect the budget or anything going forward. So Emily Eidelman is here in the audience. Sorry about that, Emily. And so if you have any questions for her, she can answer those, or questions for me. We're happy to answer those.
All right, great. Thank you, Cleve. Thank you, Emily. We'll go ahead and I will open up for any questions from my colleagues or comments.
I didn't have questions. I had some comments, and it's about the social media regarding Facebook, because not everybody does things the same. I'd like to see our Facebook reflect our government policies, where those meetings are noticed 72 hours ahead of time, and that they're on our timeline and not the story. I don't know about other people, but I never look at any stories. So I've never seen anything that's been on a city story. I've never seen that information at all, and I don't think I'm alone in my age bracket with that, So I was looking to be able to go to the website for all the information that we need for government. So I want to be able to see all those meetings on our timeline, a few days ahead, so people can look and be able to go to those meetings. And I also thought some original photos with those instead of graphics might work. For example, like Park and Rec, I think, is having their next meeting at Scout Hall. Maybe a picture of Scout Hall. Just to bring some new and different stuff, a picture of the commission, while they're smiling and looking at you. I'm not suggesting we take things from Zoom with people's mouths open, but just to get the out to the public. Here's the people, here's the meetings. I know with Facebook, sometimes photos can be more engaging than graphics, and so I just wanted to make those suggestions.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Kind of the same, yeah. I do want to see. I know we have a lot of important committee meetings, and I know sometimes it's a challenge to get the community involved, even at the city council level, let alone at Rex and Park and Measure H&L and Peak and some other things where we've had some pretty good discussions. I know there's some people, including people here in the audience, that are really good about going to those meetings and communicating. But to the extent that we can get even more residents hopefully involved, that would be great as well. And I know stories are usually the hit, that's what gets more of the clicks. But I also think we do have a older population sometimes that maybe aren't going to those and maybe just want to see the static information as well. So just some ideas, but happy to any thoughts that you might have as well. And then Councilmember Gottberg, if you had it.
Yeah, I just had a couple of things kind of along this line of, I know we don't have as good of sort of following on Instagram. And, a lot of my friends, they don't use Facebook. Like, they might be on Instagram, but they're not on Facebook. So I think, getting our kind of younger generation, we need to figure out how to maybe do videos or something that's more engaging that will get people to follow us on Instagram. I know always young people engagement can be hard, but I'd like to be able to like share stuff on Instagram, and I have to like go searching myself, and I follow the page to like find it to share it. So that's just something. I don't think it's as easy to find on Instagram, or it doesn't come up in my feed, things like that.
Oh, okay, so I see what you're saying about going and having to find it. Yeah, so that's actually to do with the algorithm on Instagram. They're going to promote things that you want to see and what you interact with the most. So if you're not interacting with the page as frequently, say, as you are, famous footwear, right? Then you're not going to see our content as soon as you open up the page. So we have been growing the Instagram page. It's been growing pretty steadily. I'd say we get at least one new follower a day. And actually, over the last 2 weeks, we've seen a lot more engagement than we have 6 months ago on a lot of our content. As far as the stories go, it really is a generational thing, Jackie, like you said. And it's also trial and error. We tried posting just the standalone posts, typically 48 hours to 72 hours in advance, letting people know that there's a city council meeting and here's the link with the agenda. They were not a hit, like, at all. And then we tried the stories and we got more views and we actually got quite a few clicks on the link. But it doesn't mean that we can't mess with that and maybe do both. So instead, post 72 hours in advance and then do a story 24 hours ahead of time. And also messing with the graphics and the photos and the videos. Everything is definitely trial and error when it comes to social media. What works for, what works right now, what's trending right now is not trending in 6 months. So we constantly have to adjust. And those are all really great suggestions, and half of them are about what I have in my head already. So thank you for sounding that back to me. I really appreciate that.
No, thank you. And I think you both have mentioned this, and I was thinking about this was, and I don't know if this is in the ability in the contract or not, but, I'd love to see a video, there's Dave, maybe just talking about finances, like something's really simple, high level, or Pierre talking about our code enforcement officer, but just some sort of topical topics where, we can, maybe generate some interest on items that are coming up. It could be a council member or whatever, but just to change it up a little bit as well, maybe different type of content, as long as I'm not having to do something dumb, I'm happy to do something where I'm not embarrassed to do it, but yeah, I think we're all happy to do that, to provide, more evergreen content for you to be able to post. So please feel free to, I think, and I am talking on behalf of staff as well, so I apologize if I'm volunteering you to
They're all
do
looking
anything.
away right now. Everyone's looking down.
But I hopefully everyone would be available to do stuff like that as well. We would,
Really glad to hear you guys say that, because now that we have made the major adjustments the first year of working together, we're definitely going to work together a lot more closely this next year, and so I will be calling on all of you for videos. But I do meet with the staff here weekly, and so they are very helpful as they can be, and they'll send me photos and stuff like that out and about, and so yes, there's definitely room for improvement by far.
Great, thank you. And I have to remember to do that too, to send if I see a good photo, if we're at an event or something like that. I don't remember. I get yelled at by my own folks. Say, why didn't you post?
Yes.
We're at whatever, and I just like I didn't think about it. So I will try to do better as well when it comes to just getting information out as well on that. So
Thank you.
all right. Any other comments? All right. Thank you, Emily. Okay, we did public comments. We did. Okay. All right, so we brought it back to us. So this is an action item. Do we have any further conversation? Did I do public comment? I didn't. Okay. So I will go ahead and open this up for public comment. Thank you. I lost track. Any public comment on this item? All right, seeing none, we will now bring it back to City Council for further action.
I'll move to approve 7.8.
I'll second.
All right, we have a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Gottberg,
Aye.
Vice Mayor No,
Aye.
Mayor Saragosa.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, we're looking forward to working with you again for the next year and appreciate the comments and context as well tonight. Thank you. Okay, moving along. We do not have any ordinance this evening, item 10, so we will move to item 11. We have three similar items, 11.1 through 11.3. So we will start with 11.1, which is a consideration to adopt a resolution declaring the abandoned pole sign located at 50 Main Street as an abandoned on-premise sign and a public nuisance, and declare to commence abatement. And Mr. Rivas has a report for us tonight.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. The subject parcel is located on the south side of Main Street between Forney Road and Canal Street. To the left is the Hog Wild Restaurant and Catering. To the right is the Whistle Stop Yogurt Store. There is a figure of what the sign looks like in your package. The sign is still there, advertising the Gold Country Chiropractic that is no longer in business. It is a lit sign, and it's lit at night. The abandoned pole sign was legally installed in 1998 under a building permit. It is 97.5 square feet, illuminated cabinet, and the post is 38 feet in height. The current sign does not meet current sign regulations in accordance with the zoning code. The Golden Chiropractic business has not conducted business on the project site since about 2019, early 2020. Pursuant to the zoning ordinance, any abandoned business is one that is not operated on a regular business and active basis for a period of 180 days or more, during which the business advertised has not carried on those activities which are necessary and incidental to the operation of a business or like type and character. So with that, staff is recommending that the council adopt the proposed resolution declaring the abandoned on-premises sign to be a public nuisance and direct the Development Services Director to abate. That concludes staff's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Pierre. And, this is an evergreen topic as well. We were just talking about sort of last time, just in general, about code enforcement and the fact that we now have a full-time code enforcement officer, and we're just kind of getting back into that rhythm of enforcing our city codes and regulations. And I have to say, like, I was just saying, I thought this business was still here. I didn't realize it had actually closed down because the sign was still there. So it's actually good to know. So I don't have any questions. Do you all have any questions on this item? All right, seeing no questions at this time, I will go ahead and open up item 11.1 for any public comment. All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back. So Pierre, the entire pole comes down, not just the sign?
Yes, the entire structure.
Okay, got it. And so if someone new comes in and they obviously they want a sign, they got to come in and ask for.
They would come in and they could either seek to have a ground sign or a pole sign, but a pole sign now under our code requires a site plan review and a conditional use permit.
Gotcha.
And there are standards as far as how it's to be designed.
So we go to Planning Commission, at the very least, it would go to Planning Commission.
Yes,
for a pole sign. And then is the height still the same in terms of the?
A pole sign is defined as any ground sign that exceeds 10 feet in height. So if it exceeds 10 feet in height, then it requires a conditional use permit, which allows the city to make the determination of necessity for the additional height.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
And just so the council is aware, the Development Services Department went through a similar process, I believe, and the city manager can correct me if I got the dates wrong, but I think it was about 2011, 2012, a comprehensive review of a lot of these pole signs throughout the city, and a number of them, I think it was about half a dozen signs, were rendered a nuisance and were removed.
Gotcha. Yeah, I can think of at least two off the top of my head that are not there anymore. So, thank you. Okay. If there's no further questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve 11.1, removing the abandoned pole at 50 Main Street.
And I'll second, and I think it's important that we, don't have signs for businesses that don't exist anymore for years, so.
Agreed. All right, we have a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Gottberg.
Aye.
Vice Mayor No.
Aye.
Mayor Zaragoza.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, so this is one of three. So we will move to item 11.2, which is also a consideration to adopt a resolution declaring the abandoned pole sign located at 1174 Broadway as an abandoned on-premise sign, any public nuisance, and declare to commence abatement. And Mr. Bravas.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This particular parcel is located just east of the intersection of Mosquito Road, Main Street and Broadway. Based on the review of permit records, it appears that the structure, which was previously addressed at 18 Broadway, was constructed prior to 1949, so it's a very old sign. The sign, the maximum height of the sign is limited to 20 feet. Under the permit, staff found no other reference to building permits for the pole sign. However, the most recent occupant of the subject structure was the Goodwill Donation Express. Prior to that, it was a smoke shop for a number of years. You have a picture of the sign in your packet. It's been abandoned since, about 2015, 2016, when the Goodwill vacated the premises. The property included the sign and what was originally a little house, has been vacant for about 6 or 7 years now. Staff has spoken with a representative of the 7-Eleven Corporation that owns the properties and the adjacent gas station, and they are saying that they will go ahead and remove the sign. They have no need for the sign, but staff did emphasize that we would like to talk with their corporate headquarters and see if there's any interest in maybe getting a new business in that building. It's been abandoned for a long time. It's good commercial space, maybe for a small store or something. So we're going to hope to generate some good use of the building. So with that, I won't. It's the same abandoned business section of the code. That's 10-4-17E that we're referring to. So with that, staff is recommending that the council adopt a proposed resolution to declare this an abandoned on-premises sign and direct the Development Services Director to abate. That concludes staff's report.
Thank you, Pierre. I forgot, it's a little off topic now, but on the first one, did we also have correspondence with the owner of the property about whether or not they were open to taking it down, besides us having to go through more?
Yes, we have been in contact with Mr. Nunning for quite some time. There's a number of other code enforcement issues. It's been an ongoing
process,
an ongoing situation with that property.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
Sign.
Thank you. So no question. Any questions? Yep. All right, seeing none. Any public comments? All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back. I mean, this is obviously very similar. This is one that I'm very familiar with. You know, I knew this has been abandoned, or not abandoned, but vacant for a very long time. So definitely in need of the sign coming down from that location. So I guess with that, I'll make a motion on this one to approve the ordinance to remove the sign at 1174 Broadway.
I'll second.
All right, we have a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Gottberg.
Aye.
Vice Mayor No.
Aye.
Mayor Zaragoza.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go to item 11.3, which is also to consider to adopt a resolution declaring the abandoned pole sign located at 1267 Broadway as an abandoned on-premise sign and a public nuisance, and to declare and to commence abatement. And Pierre for the hat trick.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This property is located between Highway 50 and Broadway, just east of Carson Drive. It's located across the street from the Save Mart grocery store. Based on a review of our permit records, It appears that the sign was constructed in about 1963. The sign in question is currently advertising the signed copy of Delta Bedding and Furniture, which moved from that location in about 2019, 2021. It now is, that property is now occupied by Foothill Taekwondo. So the same has been abandoned for well over 180 days. Staff is recommending that the council adopt the proposed resolution declaring this on-premise sign to be a public nuisance and direct the DSD director to abate. Staff would note that maybe a little late, but staff has contacted the property owner, and the property owner is more than happy to remove the sign.
Great. All right, thank you, Pierre. And I guess on this one, because this one I was familiar with as well, because I know the Taekwondo location is there. I think that's the West Paul's business. They didn't have any desire to, I guess, go through a process to put their own signage into this pole sign.
The Taekwondo has signage on their building, but we did not contact Taekwondo regarding this sign. We contacted the
owner. Okay,
about the
gotcha.
sign.
And I figured they would, they probably would check with them. Okay, no problem. All right, any other comments or questions? All right, see none. Any public comments?
Sue Rodman, resident of Placerville, and I'd like to congratulate Pierre on getting some of this, getting our city cleaned up and getting some of the old crummy signs out of here.
Great. Thank you, Sue. Okay. I will go ahead and close public comment, bring it back to City Council.
I'll move this item.
All right, I'll second. All right, we have a first and second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Gottberg?
Aye.
Vice Mayor No?
Aye.
Mayor Saragosa?
Aye. All right, thank you, Pierre. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay, moving along, we will move to items 12, which are our discussion and action items for this evening, and item 12.1, which is a consideration of a memorandum of understanding with Waste Connections of California for purchase and delivery of compost to satisfy the city's requirements under Senate Bill 1383 and Assembly Bill 1985. And, Mr. Rivas, for the fourth time, Pierre, your show tonight.
I'm on a winning streak here.
Yes.
Keep it going. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. To give a little background, Senate Bill 1383, which you're all pretty familiar with at this point in time, it requires every jurisdiction to procure annually a quantity of organic waste products. The amount of procurement, which is based on the city's population, is 871 tons if that procurement is compost. Assembly Bill 1985 sets procurement targets at 30% for 2023, 65% for 2024, and 100% for 2025. So for the current fiscal year that we're currently in, that's 2023-24, the total procurement amount is 544 tons. And so that's all of calendar year of 2023 and half of the calendar year for 2024, that being January through June, the end of June. So Waste Connections, also known as El Dorado Disposal, provides the city with the collection of residential and commercial waste and the collection of organic waste under a franchise agreement. El Dorado Disposal is proposing to backhaul finished compost from a Waste Connections organic composting facility to satisfy the city's procurement of organic waste products to meet the city's SB 1383 and AB 1985 requirements. And just a note too, it has come to our attention that this compost material is certified organic, which makes it very valuable for gardeners and farmers. The finished compost must be produced at a facility meeting the state's requirements, which this does. Eligible compost reduces the required tonnage by 42%. Therefore, the city's total procurement for this fiscal year is 315 tons of compost, which is 151 tons for calendar year 2023, plus 164 tons for the half of calendar year 2024. El Dorado Disposal is proposing a cost of $32 per ton to deliver the compost to Placerville. And this will equate for a total cost of $10,103 for the fiscal year 2023 to 2024. The compost may be used by residents, community gardens, parks, schools, agriculture for soil augmentation, and for the reduction in the use of fertilizers. The compost would be made available to the user free of charge. Thus, procurement of the compost provides a direct benefit to the community in addition to meeting the state's procurement requirements. So the plan is the compost is to be delivered to El Dorado Disposal's buyback center, which is located at 600 Truck Street at the corner of Highway 49 near its current material recovery facility, the MRF. The cost for development of a community collection site will be borne by the city. The city has received a $21,000 grant from CalRecycle's FY 21-22 local assistant grant to assist the city with implementation of Senate Bill 1383. No grants may be used by the city for the cost of the compost. However, the funds can be used for transportation. The funds are sufficient to cover the cost of development of the site costs, including signage, public education materials, and events. Staff is proposing to modify the scope of the local assistance grant and defer one of the two currently planned public events to next year. And we are looking at using approximately $4,500 of the $21,000 to cover some of those transportation costs, which would reduce the burden on the city's budget, although that $10,000 amount is fully covered within the current adopted budget for this fiscal year. In addition, the city will be seeking additional funding through the fiscal year 22-23 local assistance grant from CalRecycle, which should yield the city at least an estimated $75,000 to further facilitate implementation of 1383. So again, additional public outreach. It can cover additional transportation costs of the additional tonnage we have to bring in subsequent years, and doing additional public events. Staff at this time wishes to thank Waste Connections in their cooperation in assisting and working with the city in meeting its procurement obligations under Senate Bill 1383, and in particular thank Nathan Peru, who serves at El Dorado Disposal's Sustainability Coordinator, and he has actively assisted us with the development of the compost program. So with that, staff is recommending that the council adopt the resolution to approve the Memorandum of Understanding with Waste Management of California for the purchase and delivery of compost for a cost of $10,104 for fiscal year 23-24. Two, authorize the Development Services Director to execute the Memorandum of Understanding. Three, approve the acquisition and purchase of necessary materials for the development of what we call the community collection site, and purchase of public education materials and other materials in support of public education events for a cost not to exceed the amount of $21,070. That's the amount of the current grant that we have received. And then four, approve a $21,070 budget appropriation in CalRecycle's fiscal year 21-22 SB 1383 local assistant grant funds. That concludes staff's report. Be happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Great. Thank you, Pierre. I appreciate that. It's a lot of information, so thank you for the background plus the information for today's vote. Do we have any comments or questions? All right. We'll go ahead and open up for any public comments. You want to? No public comments? All right. All right, so we'll bring it back. I think, the one thing that I have to say that really stood out, and I want to thank El Dorado Disposal is, having a location at their facility, I think was truly helpful to the city in coming to a resolution on this issue. It would have been difficult for a city location to make it work, and just I could foresee issues in the future. So I really appreciate that partnership on this issue because obviously that's space in your facility as well. So I want to thank you for that. I think that's great. In terms of the like the 21,000. So I know there's like money for outreach materials and things like that. Is that us thinking ahead, kind of like to tell the public where to go, things like that? Is this what some of that monies would be for?
Yes, we wanted to include, a real strong public outreach component. So in addition to, again, assisting residents with the whole recycling of food waste, where it goes, the benefit, we want to make them aware of the availability of free compost. Staff has looked into other cities in the Bay Area, and they're very, very successful. The compost goes fast, so I'm hoping we have the same situation here, that once the public is aware, especially those involved in home gardening or even some of our small farms and ranches, they can certainly use this compost. It is organic, which makes it, I would say, much more valuable to use. Really, the big cost is not the compost, but it's the transportation. It's the hauling. But yes, indeed, we want to make the public aware and provide all kinds of different things. And if the council desires, we'd be happy to bring maybe just at a future item just to, showcase some of the items that we're creating to provide to the public.
I think that would be great. I think it's just to give the public more knowledge about what those things are. I know, from a personal perspective. So I have Mattress Recycling Council as one of my clients, and we're constantly trying to get information out there for people to understand that they can recycle their mattress. Like 90% of the mattress is recyclable. So, and even with a lot of city participation and others, and waste haulers and others, there's still a lot of information that people aren't aware of. So I think it's very valuable to have that information get out so people understand, especially with all the new rules that have gone into place. And we'll see how it even works with our folks actually putting their food waste and other items into the green waste bins. I mean, I was always concerned that people were going to come back to us saying, you got to go to weekly, because we don't want that stuff sitting in our green waste for 2 weeks. So I haven't gotten those emails yet, or people coming, but we'll see as the process goes along. Okay. Any other comments or questions?
No, I mean, I would just echo, and my biggest concern was the location, and I think, this is a good option. I do realize that for some of our constituents, it's a little bit of a drive to get out there, but it's, 15 minutes, not that big of a deal, hopefully, for most folks, and hopefully most folks that want to use it know somebody, or, with a truck or something like that they can maybe join up as a team and pick up what they need for their community.
I agree. I'm going to be hitting up Councilmember Clarici to use his truck so I can go get some fertilizers, since I don't got a truck, so I'll need somebody. Okay. So with that, then I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move 12.1 per staff's recommendations, A, B, C, D, and E.
Thank you.
I will second.
All right. We have a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Gottberg?
Aye.
Vice Mayor No?
Aye.
Mayor Saragosa?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to this project and process. And, we'll see. I'm always wary of a project this big that the state has passed, and then now the cities must comply with. So I'm hoping everyone does, because I hate to see fines for anybody going forward. I don't think we'll be the only people in that position, but it's it's sort of brave new world. So we'll see how it all plays out. So thank you. All right, we will move to item 12.2, which is to consider a resolution of the City Council declaring its intention to establish a community facilities district and to authorize the levy of special taxes therein for Phase 4 and Phase 6 of the Cottonwood Park subdivision. Ms. Neves has this report for us.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The item before you is the first step in the creation and establishment of a community facilities district, especially for Cottonwood Phases 4 and 6. You know, the consultant for El Dorado County Fire District did a great job of kind of an overview how and why we do CFDs, but I'll touch on it briefly here. As you're aware, the project has progressed well over the past several years, where it has previously sat dormant for over 10 years prior to that, since the Great Recession. The project was purchased in 2020, where the current owner picked up the previously approved improvement plans, made some thoughtful revisions to improve not only the infrastructure, but the overall subdivision, and since then has constructed those improvements, portions of which are now slated to be publicly owned and maintained by the city. At the previous City Council meeting, the final map was approved and is ready to record with the County Recorder's Office, which will create 39 single-family home lots. Just to kind of speak on some of the information with inquiries, I did speak with the developer, and he's got about 30 people on a wait list already for this project, and quite a few folks have done inquiries as well in addition to that. The final map will be recorded concurrently with several irrevocable offers of dedication and the approved conditions, covenants, and restrictions. As you're aware, existing infrastructure funds, such as the city's Measure L fund, don't qualify for new roads and facilities, but only apply to existing infrastructure. For this reason, and as a measure to protect our local infrastructure funding, the city works with the property owners and developers to establish maintenance districts for these future needs, and it is often a condition of the project. The city has several such districts in place, such as the Rigid Orchard Hill Benefit Assessment District and the existing Cottonwood Landscape and Lighting Maintenance District that was established at the development of those prior phases. And on this project, conditions 27 and 28 of the Cottonwood Phase 4 and 6 project states that a maintenance district shall be established as part of the project for the purpose of maintaining open space areas, roads, storm drain systems, sewer infrastructure, and water distribution systems, as well as cut-fill slopes and other features like the project's detention basin. The current project owner, DLLM LP, is in support of a petition to create the district. Attached to the packet this evening is a draft that we have received their concurrence on that petition. Also included in Council's packet is the rate and apportionment method and the boundary map for the district, which coincides with the boundary of Phases 4 and 6 as described in the approved final map. On December 14, 2021, the city entered into a contract with MBS Consulting to assist in the process of creating and establishing the new district. That work has progressed, and before you this evening includes the following items and actions. Adopt the resolution of intent for the City Council declaring its intention to establish a community facilities district for Cottonwood Phases 4 and 6 and to authorize the levy of special taxes therein. We will be returning with subsequent items over the next several months to continue on the process and the establishment of the CFD. That concludes my verbal report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
All right. Thank you, Rebecca. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and open it up for public comment. All right.
Sue Rodman, Placerville resident. I just have one question. If this is going to be included so that the new development also pays for its fire, ambulance, and police protection? Or is it only the physical infrastructure of water, sewer, roads, open space?
Okay. Thank you. All right. We will close public comment, and I'll add to that, and that is, I think I know the answer to this, but I just want to daylight it, which is, I know for other CFDs, one thing that didn't happen on previous ones was indexing, and so we run a deficit because we're not actually keeping up with the true cost of maintaining that infrastructure. Does this particular CFD have a index in it? And then to the question that Sue had as well.
It does, actually. It does have an indexing. The other response to the question is because it was a pre-existing condition that was established roughly 15 years ago. It was very specific in the items it included, and at that time, it was not included. It did not include any fire, police, or medic service response services. However, I will say that moving forward, when new development has been coming through and considered, we do have potentially another final map that expired that would be re-upping in 4 conditions. At that time, that would be included.
Understood.
Lessons learned.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Sure.
And I do think there's a level of responsibility to these as it's almost as a pay-as-you-go process with these CFDs going forward. Again, and I go back to the very complicated nature of how we do financing in California. This is definitely a tool that allows local governments to pay for things as it goes, to sort of bear those true costs going forward for those that additional infrastructure into a municipality or a special district. So, thank you. Okay. There's no other questions. I will entertain a motion on this item.
I will move the item per the staff report.
I'll second.
All right. We have a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Gottberg?
Aye.
Vice Mayor No?
Aye.
Mayor Saragosa?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. Okay. That ends our action items for this evening. We will move to item 13, which are our council reports from other agencies. And our first is transit.
Our next meeting is October 5th.
All right. Transportation.
Our next meeting is October 5th.
Sounds good. LAFCO.
So we are meeting tomorrow. The draft MSR for the city of Placerville is on the meeting agenda. 2 items I think our council should be aware of is one is it proposes no revisions to our sphere of influence or SOI. It makes a recommendation. It says LAFCO recommends that the city establish these as special study areas and proceed with studying the impacts of potential annexation of these areas prior to the application to LAFCO. Obviously, we have not discussed annexation at all, so that seems a little premature. And then it lists the recommended process for expansion of the SOI as follows. The first is to meet with the county to discuss the proposed new boundaries and explore methods to reach agreement on development standards and planning and zoning requirements. The second is to conduct an environmental review pursuant to CEQA guidelines in order to assess the potential impacts of expansion of the SOI and future annexation. It has more on that, but that's the key point. Submit an application to LAFCO identifying the proposed areas for expansion of the SOI along with supporting documentation, including appropriate CEQA documentation and any supporting general plan or other city policies supporting expansion of services. And the last, if an annexation is anticipated to take place within the next 2 years, also provide intended pre-zoning of the areas under consideration. So that is what the current draft MSR says regarding sphere of influence for City of Placerville and its recommendations. And I guess the other piece that I just wanted folks to be aware of is that essentially says that the City of Placerville is high risk financially based on a state auditor's report from 2019-20, or 2019-20, yes. So it doesn't really adequately reflect what we saw tonight based on, our most recent city audit from 2021, 2022. So that's just, I would like our council to be aware of those items on our LAFCO agenda tomorrow. And you are welcome, if you are available, to come at 5:30. It is our first item after consent calendar.
Gotcha. Thank you. That's all really good information. I mean, I'm a little perturbed by by the way that's kind of all laid out. I mean, especially the high risk. I think that's unfortunate that even would have even been added into the report. In terms of the spheres of influence, and I'm not exactly sure where we finally left it from a city perspective. But I don't know, Cleve, if you have any comments on. I mean, I wonder, it almost feels like we're being held to a higher standard than would normally be the case for some of these. I mean, in terms of, I'm fully aware you have to have CEQA documents, but if we were just looking into something, to have that level of information already seems onerous. So I'm just,
Well, Councilmember Gottberg and I discussed this yesterday when we were talking and getting some information. I haven't had a chance to talk to Mr. Rivas about that, but I don't believe a sphere of influence expansion requires CEQA review. I know annexation obviously does, and that's a given. To my knowledge, what my experience in this business, it does not require a CEQA review. But I'll let Pierre address that if he would like to. And also, you may want to hear from Mr. Warren regarding the high-risk issue. We had quite a bit of discussion, and we changed quite a bit of what was in there. What they're referring to is actually an audit that the state does that looks at this. There's a lot of factors that play into that for the reason why we are shown as high risk. I don't completely agree with that. Let's put it that way, and Dave can perhaps address that issue. So, Pierre, you want to address the issue regarding SOI expansion?
Now, this is my understanding. I would need to do further research. Staff had a Zoom meeting with LAFCO staff and their consultants, and it was their consultant that stated that in order for the city to expand its sphere of influence, the city would need to engage in a more comprehensive study of providing additional city services into those areas, in addition to doing a general plan amendment to consider those areas outside of the current sphere of influence. And so that's where it's been left. So again, I think it would require some additional research into the Cortese-Knox bill and see if there's been any amendments, any changes. What are the requirements then that the city would need to engage in should it desire to increase its sphere of influence? So unfortunately, it's not the most adequate response to the question, but that's at least my knowledge thus far.
okay, thank you. And Dave, any on the fiscal side?
Yeah, just some points of clarification. So number one is the state did not perform an audit on the city's books. I believe they use software to measure certain matrices of our financial statements, and the state controller's, the city's transaction financial report. The key to their concerns, I believe, is the loan and bonds to the wastewater treatment plant. Ironically, that was demanded by the State Water Resources Control Board. We had a cease and desist order that if we had not made the improvements to the plant, we would have been fined $10,000 a day, which was more than the debt service that we're required to pay. So there are cities that have a higher score than us that don't appear to be spending much on infrastructure. So it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. So we chose to do the right thing, build the infrastructure, make the improvements, and we continue to do that today. But we spend cash to do that. It takes money. So our reserves at that point, when it was measured in 2021, were lower than they had been in a while, but we had just finished WPI Phase 2 and several other projects. So you really have to get into the details and review the entire financial statements to come up with the conclusion of the fiscal condition of the city. You can't just go by that a few numbers on their website to make that decision.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate that. I don't know how everybody else feels, but I would be very grateful, because I don't know if I can make it tomorrow, but I'd be very grateful if, council member, if you wouldn't mind bringing that point up that Dave just mentioned, to at least try to correct the record, or at least be on the record about that, because I just feel like it impugns our fiscal integrity to have that in an actual document without at least some context to it. And the rest of it's, I think, up for more discussion in terms of our SOI and where we go with that, but which we're not going to solve tomorrow. But I do take exception with the way it's framed. But it certainly defer to you, Councilmember Gottberg, on that.
Yeah, I mean, I brought up those two items as items I wanted you guys to be aware of. They're certainly items that I will comment on as the LAFCO representative for the city that is there tomorrow. I did look into the Corsese Act. I did not find anything related to environmental review under CEQA being a requirement. I will certainly ask that question tomorrow as well, because I could not find it in the regulations anywhere as a requirement. So I'm not sure where that recommendation is coming from. Also, clearly, we have not discussed annexing any of these properties, so it seems like there's a bit of putting the cart before the horse in my mind, in terms of there's a lot of discussion of annexation, and we have not even had that discussion here. So I have no idea if we will ever want to annex this property. We certainly have no plans to at the moment.
Yeah, but it does seem a little presumptuous. And, you know, it has been 170 years. It wouldn't be the worst idea to consider.
Yes, yeah, I mean, and that's a fact. Cities grow. That's what cities do, so. Okay. Thank you for bringing that up. I think that was really important for us and for us to get it on the record for the public as well. So thank you, and we'll look forward. I'm going to try to make it at least. Do you guys have a Zoom option for folks to call in if?
Yes, we do. We have both Zoom and in person, so you can join and comment either way.
I have a feeling I'm going to be at the office, but if not, I will try to actually call in as well. But appreciate the comments you made tonight as well, and what you'll be saying tomorrow. So thank you. Okay, SACOG. We did meet, what's today? Yeah, we met last week. I'm trying to remember. So nothing really too significant. We did have the tribal leadership of Wintune, I believe. They've just opened up the new casino in Elk Grove, and they have a new chair, tribal leader. And so just really impressive. They're doing a lot of great things out at that location, and some of the expansions that they're going through, both on tribal lands and not, just sort of the economic power of the tribes in the area. And so we had a larger conversation about how to interact with tribal nations a little bit more closely from a regional standpoint. So it was an interesting conversation, and just some good history on some of the tribes in the area. So it was a good discussion. Pioneer, we'll have to wait for Councilmember Yarbrough to come back. Fire Safe Council.
Next meeting's October 5th.
All right, great. Thank you. And then Opportunity Knox, Continuum of Care.
Our next meeting will also be at the end next Friday, or end of, not this Friday, but next Friday. And I need to follow up with county staff to see if the temporary navigation MOU is at the point that it will be ready to be on that agenda. I know we're quite close, but I'm not quite sure if it'll make this meeting. So I need to follow up on that as the chair of the subcommittee.
Great. Thank you, Nicole. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open up item 13, our agency meeting reports, for any public comment.
Just one comment from Sue Rodman, Fire Safe Council, is that now the entire city of Placerville is in a fire-safe community, so we can now go fight with the insurance agents to get our discounts for that.
That's great news, Sue. And I will say, I know it was brought up before, but I did call my insurance, and I did get a 10% reduction in my rate by being in a fire-wise community. So please, public, call and at least get your, I mean, it's expensive for all of us, so every little bit will certainly helps. And I will definitely take my 10% reduction in my bill. So thank you. And that's great for the rest of Placerville. All right. So with that, we'll go to item 14, which are requests for future agenda items. Do we have any requests this evening? Nope, seeing none. Go to item 15, which are city manager and or staff reports. Anything this evening, Cleve?
Nothing in addition tonight, no.
All right. Anybody else? No takers? All right.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
And Cleve, I apologize. I wanted to bring this up to you. Just real brief. Staff has been working with the Dorado Foundation, and they are they're going to make an application to do a lighting program for Main Street. So in other words, it'll be architectural type of lighting, something you would see, say, in Nevada City, where it lights up in these small bulbs. That's more of a uniform look, and they have grant monies to do it. There'll be no cost to the city, but the staff is looking at bringing that application forward. Our desire is to go to the Planning Commission first, get a recommendation from them, then bring it back to council. I just wanted to give you a heads up on that.
Very cool. We're looking forward to seeing that. Thank you. Thank you, Pierre. All right. Item 16 is upcoming items, and I'll let the public read that at their leisure. So at 7:05, we will adjourn tonight's meeting. So thank you, everybody. Meeting is adjourned.